So I figured I'd stick a little bit of defensive flying footage at the beginning of this video, purely because there isn't any in the actual gameplay footage after the in-game or in-garage review section. Yeah. Don't just go head on, guys. There's always a better option. Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of my review videos, and today we're taking a look at the French Yak-9T. So let's start with the stat card, shall we? This aircraft has exactly the same 37mm NS-37 cannon with 30 rounds of ammunition, as well as the 12.7 50 caliber Berezin, I think that's how you pronounce it, UB machine gun with 200 rounds of ammunition. This is not a lot. Max speed is 593 kilometers an hour. Word of warning, if any of you have flown this aircraft, or any of the other Yaks for that matter, in the Russian territory, you will know that they do not take particularly well to diving, which is why I tend to not climb in this aircraft, but we'll get to that in a minute. The 1 second burst mass for this aircraft is 3.87 kilograms. But be careful with that, because if you fire this gun for too long, 4 or 5 rounds in rapid succession, as in holding the trigger, the gun will jam. This is bad news, because that 37 is the only thing that's going to get you any kills. Well, reliably at least, but that's another matter. Max altitude of this aircraft is 10,000 meters. You should not be flying it anywhere near that high. The turn time of 18 seconds, although that's the virage time. That's flying level with the rudder turning. In reality, the aircraft can actually turn a lot faster than that. A 16 meters per second rate of climb, which is pretty decent, really. And a takeoff run of 366 meters. This aircraft has an absolutely fantastic reward of, you'll have to bear in mind, I do currently have a premium account because I bought this aircraft, so 408%, I think it's roughly 400% XP, or RP, whatever you want to call it, and around 800% Lions reward, which is fantastic. I have not lost any money playing this aircraft. Even in the games where I've taken off, got on a couple of hits, and then died, I've made money. So, that's the stat card. Let's have a look at the aircraft in a little bit more detail. So, this isn't going to be quite as interesting as the tank reviews, because it is an aircraft review after all. I apologise for that, but it is what it is. You have a 12-cylinder inline Klimov VK-105PF engine. It's water cooled and has 1210 horsepower and weighs 600 kilos. The UB machine gun is mounted just in front of the cockpit window, and the 37 is mounted down the propeller hub. Most of the fuel tanks are in the wings. Actually, minus the little one between the pilot's feet, they're all in the wings. This aircraft, though, is not particularly sturdy at all. Most of the rounds that hit it tend to do a ridiculous amount of damage, especially 50 calibers firing incendiary ammunition. Do not get hit by 50 calibers firing incendiary ammunition. You will have a particularly bad day. As for armour plating, there's a piece of armour plating behind the pilot, 8mm thick. Armour glass, 64mm thick. In the rear and in the front, 64mm thick as well. This would make you believe that this aircraft is good for going in head-ons. That's how I get a lot of kills with it, although I wouldn't recommend flying it like that, because you're basically limiting yourself. This aircraft can turn and can roll quite well, so in theory you'll be able to dogfight pretty much anything, so long as it's at low altitude with you, where this aircraft performs best, especially if you're fighting the Germans. Should you run into anything Japanese, however, that kind of changes, and yeah, but that's an entirely different issue. Most of the time you'll be fighting the Germans. Okay, so let's get into the gameplay footage and we'll talk in a little bit more detail about this aircraft there. So let's just begin with our gameplay footage, shall we? We are on this desert map. This is a fairly new map within the rotation as far as I know. I can't remember the name of it, which should tell you all you need to know about what I think about this map. I don't regard it particularly highly. I know for all intents and purposes the aircraft maps are just a texture on the floor and a layer strip at each end, but hey, what are you going to do? So, I said in the hangar that I don't like climbing in this aircraft, and this remains true, although in this game at the very beginning at least I have climbed to almost 2,000 meters. This is just so that I'm above the enemy ground attackers, like that Dornier 217 over there. Those are mainly the targets that I go for in this aircraft, or at the very least they're targets that I prioritise. I'm not saying that I'll ignore fighters. I will go for fighters if I have the opportunity to get one, or try to get one anyway. But generally speaking, I go for ground attackers. They're slower, less manoeuvrable, and an easier target to hit. But Red, why don't you just go for bombers then? They're an even easier target to hit, because they're at high altitude, and I can't get there. And if I do get there, and there happens to be a 109 above me, which is quite likely, it will kill me. So, I stay at lower altitude, and I prioritise their enemy ground attackers. This works on some maps better than it works on others, but it's worked out quite well for me so far. So, first target is an FW1. Never mind. It just pancaked straight into the floor. The 37mm, I didn't see that going until the very last second, so that was lucky. The 37mm. Oh my god, the 37mm is you will have heard the term occasionally in ground forces referring to certain vehicles as glass cannons. The Waffenträger immediately springs to mind. This aircraft is not necessarily a glass cannon, because generally speaking, if that 50 caliber, oh my god, if that 37mm hits something, it will obliterate it. But due to netcoding, there's a good chance that it will also spark. Now, sparks are one thing. Sparks I can kind of deal with. But when it's not sparks, and it straight up says hit, but it doesn't do anything, that's when I get annoyed. I was playing a game last night, got right behind a Focke-Wulf 190, pulled the trigger, and I fire in one-shot bursts, by the way, with a 37mm. I don't burst fire it, I just single fire it. Makes you conserve ammo a lot more, and drastically reduces the chances of you jamming the gun, which is a problem, as I mentioned. So, I fired a burst. Wow, I fired one shot. That was bullshit, by the way. I fired one shot, hit the wing, where the wing connects with the fuselage, which I should have hit one of his wing spars, and took his wing off. All it did was come up with hit. Nothing else. Unless it was one of the rounds that was more like a tracer rather than an explosive shell. But either way, 37mm round hitting your wing would do something other than just cause it to hit. Decent kill on the 109G, not a particularly difficult kill, but so let's head back to base. So, fully fueled, fully rearmed, we are heading out after the last vehicle on the enemy team. This is a BV. Yes, the infinite and infamous, actually. BV-238. I never bought one of these things, although Scooter did, and it resulted in a video of me recording. I'd been knocked out of the match, recording him in his BV whilst sat on the ocean in the, not the Spain map, which one is it? Is it Italy or Sicily? One or the other. There's like a massive lake in the middle, and he was sat in it just using his bomber as a anti-aircraft emplacement in the middle of the lake, which was quite amusing. So enough chit chat. Let's talk more about the Yak, shall we? Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. I enjoy the Yaks. My favourite of all of them in the game is the Yak-9T. which wasn't actually a real well, it existed, but it never saw combat. It was used to parade around in Russia during the Cold War, well, very early Cold War period after the Second World War ended, before it was replaced by the MiGs and other things. It is quite a pretty aircraft though, and it does have 320mm cannons, which kind of sways your opinion. And this being Russian 20mm cannons, they're not that bad either. They're no Hispanos, but they're pretty decent. Whereas the gun on the Yak-9T sparks quite a lot. You get hits, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And to really add insult to injury, the 200 rounds in the 50 caliber UB machine gun just isn't enough. If you run out of 37mm ammo, which you only get 30 shots of, remember, if you run out, then there's a pretty good chance that you'll just be pissing in the wind from there on in. You won't be able to kill anything unless you get lucky. I mean, you might set a fire. I've done it with my 7.92s and my 109s before. Fired a burst, blasted the 2 machine gun ammunition, hit a plane, hit its fuel tank, set it on fire, and it died. But you can't ever count on that. Always try and go for the option that gives you the best chance of success, which is the 37mm main gun. The 50 caliber is just there as a backup, really. Hell, if I had enough buttons on my controller, I would opt not to fire the machine gun when I fire the cannon, just to make it easier to aim, and to save the 200 rounds of ammunition should I really need it. I mean, I fired at a 190 in another game, and I sprayed his entire fuselage with the 50 cal. Didn't do nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, yeah. Second issue with this aircraft is aiming. The 37mm, when you fire it, it looks like you need to aim it or lead a lot more than you do, but that isn't strictly the case. Sometimes an aircraft can be 600 meters away flying in a straight line. You can fire almost dead center to its tail and blow its tail off. But if it's 300 meters away from you, in a bank, you might have to lead a lot more than you'd think. It's very situational. It's not an exact science, which is why, even with 30 rounds of ammunition, you'd say, oh well, if you're good enough, maybe you'll get 1 hit out of 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, that's 6 kills. No. Because it doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. The world is an unusual and scary place, and the Yak-9T is definitely an unusual and scary object within it. You need to fly by its rules, you need to obey its rules. Do not dive past 650 kilometers an hour, because you will shear your wings off. I have not ripped this aircraft yet, because I know better, because I've flown the other ones, and I know roughly how the Yak-9T flies. Scooter, on the other hand, not so much. Before we end, by the way, I should state that I've been using air belts for both the 50 caliber and the 37mm in this game, which, in matter of fact, is what I load most of my my Yak-9 with. Incoming tracer from the BV-238. No worries. Takes some evasive action, threading the needle through his volley, for lack of a better word. I must say, I'm liking the fact that there are more night battles. It is incredibly pretty. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found this video somewhat informative, if not amusing. And like, comment, share, subscribe if you want to see more, or dislike as well. You do you. And I'll see you guys in the next War Thunder video. Probably something French. We'll see. Cheers.